SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. And for those of you listening in Urban View, I'm actually now live on YouTube. YouTube knows this, but y'all don't because I didn't announce it. And I tried not to do that. Try to let y'all know when we are on live. So I want to talk today. It's going to be a heavy conversation. I apologize. I'm not going to apologize. It's what it is. It's the world we in. We are all fa-foing together. It is what it is. But today's conversation is going to be a little bit heavy for this opening segment. I'm going to start by, I hope I don't get dinged for this by the algorithm gods, but I'm going to start by reading an excerpt from Octavia Butler's book, Parable of the Sower. If you've never read Parable of the Sower, I just recommend that you do, but don't do it while you're scared and worried about things. Do it when you're in a space where you can actually, you know what? Let me not even put that limitation on it. Read the book, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents. It's very prescient. The book was written, I believe, in the 90s, and it starts out in 2024 with a president of America by the name of Donald Connor. And Donald Connor, who has a slogan of "Make America Great Again." Again, this book is written in the 90s, has a slogan of "Make America Great Again," is presiding over an America that looks very, very different. As opposed to the federal states being united, every state is sort of like its own territory. So imagine if, say, this president tries to get Greenland, and then Canada's like, you know what, I got you. You trying to get Greenland, you trying to take Panama. We're going to take California, Washington, and Oregon. Since, we already share corridors with them anyway, you're going to take this, I'm going to take that. And Parable of the Sower is when it takes place in America that is very broken apart. There are no public goods, right? So if you need police officers to come to help you in the Parable of the Sower reality, you got to pay them privately. You got to pay them personally. If you need firefighters to come put out the fire in your house, you have to pay them privately. And so I'm going to read this excerpt from the book, and it's from chapter 4. And then we're going to get into the news for the day and talk about how the news for the day is connected to what it is we're talking about. So on chapter 4, it opens up with the words of the author, who's the narrator. It's in first person, and she's writing. These are kind of like her diary entries that we're getting access to. And one of the things she writes in her book is dated Saturday, February 1st, 2025. Ciao. She says, "We had a fire today. People worry so much about fire, but the little kids will play with it if they can. We were lucky with this fire. Amy Dunn, 3 years old, managed to start it in her family's garage. And once the fire began to crawl up the wall, Amy got scared and ran into the house. She knew she had done something bad, so she didn't tell anyone. She just hid under her grandmother's bed. Now, out back, the dry wood of the garage burned hot and fast. Robin Bader saw the smoke and rang the emergency bell on the island in our street. Robin's only 10, but she's a bright little kid, one of my stepmother's star students. She keeps her head, and if she hadn't alerted people as soon as she saw the smoke, the fire could have spread. I heard the bell and I ran out like everyone else to see what was wrong. The Dunns, they live across the street from us, so I couldn't miss the smoke. The fire plan worked the way it was supposed to. The adult men and women put out the fire with garden hoses, shovels, wet towels, and blankets. Those without hoses beat at the edges of the fire and smothered them with dirt. Kids my age helped out where we were needed. And, hold on, get to the next page. And we put out any new fires started by flying embers. We bought buckets to fill with water and shovels, blankets, and towels of our own. There were a lot of us, and we kept our eyes open. The very old people watched the little kids and kept them out of the way and out of trouble." Pause. This is the plan. This is a community that had to have a fire plan. And here's why they had to have their own how to put out the fire plan. Because they said, of course, she goes on, no one called the fire department. No one would take on fire service fees just to save an unoccupied garage. Most of our households couldn't afford another big bill anyway. The water wasted on putting out the fire was going to be hard enough to pay for. This is a community in California. And this is a community of people where not only are the states broken apart and no longer working in a federal approach to government, but neighborhoods are broken apart. So me and my blocks, we might be in this neighborhood, you and them blocks, you over there, and the space in between of gutted out buildings and destitute land because the entire infrastructure of America in this version of America has been broken down. Those of you joining us, you're listening to Lurie Daniel Favors on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Oh, yes. And please like and subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. Now, the reason I wanted to start with that story is because unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the hell that is happening in Los Angeles right now with the Palisades fire and the many other fires that have started is absolutely devastating. I have heard stories and read news news interviews and reports about people who I picked up and I ran and I got to safety. And then safety was no longer safe. So I had to pick up and run and go to safety somewhere else. And then that somewhere else was no longer safe. So I had to pick up and run and go to safety somewhere else. And these are people right now and living in the state of California who are dealing with the explosion of fires driven by winds that are so strong. They are hurricane force winds. I learned a new phrase today. The phrase was fire NATO, like tornado, but with fire, because there is so much wind, hurricane strength winds driving the fire in such a way that the water that the firefighters need to put it out is insufficient. Now, there has been some suspicion, some musing. Of course, the anti-DEI crowd never fails to miss a moment, and they're blaming the mayor Karen Bass for cutting the budget, but they always forget that the Republicans and the conservatives lobbied for her to cut the budget. They pushed her to cut the budget. They funded campaigns to demand that she cut the budget. And she did indeed cut the budget, but she cut the fire department's budget. And they're saying, oh, she cut $17 million out of the fire department's budget. Yeah, she did. You pushed her to do it. And that was how much percentage of the overall firefighting department? 2%. Because the firefighters in Los Angeles have an $800 million budget, and she cut 2% of their budget and had to increase funds for the police because Republicans, conservatives demanded that be done. And they were able to galvanize and campaign and spread messaging through social media to indicate that this is what the people wanted. Interestingly enough, the billionaires are also finding out. Right? Because the billionaires who helped to fund that campaign, the wealthy who helped to fund the campaigns to cut the budgets, these are people who don't like paying taxes. And remember, one of the main reasons that Donald Trump wanted the debt ceiling raised during this last round of budget negotiations under the continuing resolution, which we talked about in December, was because he wants the tax cuts for billionaires, that $1.9 trillion tax cut package that he and the Republicans passed during his first administration. Those tax cuts expire in 2025. And he and his billionaire boys want the tax cuts to be permanent. And billionaires don't like paying taxes. And billionaires will often give a lot of money to charity to deflect from the fact that if they were just paying their fair share of taxes, we wouldn't need charity. I had a conversation with Alex Lawson of an organization, an amazing organization called Social Security Works. It's actually a pre-taped interview that you guys are going to hear next Wednesday for those of you who have a SiriusXM subscription. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that everybody loves Social Security, and billionaires absolutely hate Social Security, and they want to cut all of the entitlement programs because they don't like paying into the public good. That's sort of part of being a billionaire. Now, what was interesting about this is one billionaire found out in particular. His name is Keith Wasserman. Now, Keith Wasserman is an investor from LA, real estate investor, ironically enough, who has boasted repeatedly about not paying his taxes. Basically, I'm a billionaire boy. I don't do taxes. I ain't got to do that. And he has essentially also encouraged taxes to be cut. He damn sure don't want to pay property taxes, particularly because he's a real estate billionaire. And he has called for not just cutting property taxes, but cutting the tax revenues across the board. Similar to the billionaires and the Republicans and the conservatives in Los Angeles proper, who pushed the mayor and the political class to cut taxes because it does not benefit them. You know who taxes benefit? Taxes benefit us. Like, we pay for our schools with our taxes. And if you cut all your tax base and you don't have the funding to replace it to support your school system, you might end up like Indiana, where right now they're floating a House bill that basically, if your school population does not at a level of 50% or more enroll in public education, they're going to dissolve your public education system and funnel you into private education charters. That's a story for another day. We're going to delve into that probably sometime next week. But let's get back to Keith Wasserman's ass. So early Wednesday morning, and this is an article, hold on, I want to give them credit, Daily Dot, early Wednesday morning, and it's been all over the news, but I just, I like citing my sources. They say that an investor in Los Angeles, California, who previously called for cutting property taxes is being mocked. Why would Keith Wasserman be getting mocked in this moment? Well, Keith Wasserman, the same billionaire butthead who decided that paying taxes and his fair share, because he's a billionaire, was anathema to him. And he's like many of the other billionaires. Part of the reason, let me circle back to Social Security for a minute, just stick a pin right there. Part of the reason that billionaires don't appreciate entitlement programs is because they would have to pay more into Social Security programs. They would have to pay more into the programs if they were paying into public good programs at the same rates that we are. So if you make under $170,000, I think it's $170,000 a year, you pay into Social Security on 100% of your income. You're going to pay on Social Security from January 1st until December 31st on 100% of your income. If you make over $170,000 at the point of the year that you reach $170,000, from that point until December of that year, you're no longer paying into Social Security. It's capped. And they don't want the cap to be lifted, because imagine if elongated muskrat had to pay on his income that exceeded $170,000. He's a billionaire. Do you know how much more money our country would have to invest in housing programs, to invest in programs for the homeless, to invest in mental health services, to make sure that when you talk about healthcare, you also include your teeth and your eyes? Because I don't know what billionaire came up with the idea that body insurance should not include your mouth and your eyes or your brain, but whatever. And so this is why they don't like paying into these programs. Keith Wasserman has been a huge proponent of not paying into the public good welfare system. But here's Keith Wasserman once the fires in LA reached his property. Does anybody have access to private firefighters to protect our home in Pacific Palisades? Need to ask fast here. All the neighbors' houses are burning. We'll pay any amount. Thank you. Like, this mug put this shit out on Twitter and like a real proposition. Like, I've got billions of dollars. I'm willing to pay any amount for you to come keep my home safe. Now, had he not lobbied for the firefighters' budget to be cut, had he not lobbied to cut taxes so that the public pot of money that is used for the common good, which everybody in LA is experiencing right now, would have been far more bountiful than it is. Now, what's interesting about this is that in September, he made a post for property taxes to be cut. He has frequently he's bragged about not paying taxes. But when the fires don't recognize your billionaire status, when the hurricanes don't give a good goddamn that you made more money than Black Jesus, when the earthquakes don't recognize who you are and they don't know that you founded this, that, or the other, then it's real interesting how much humanity we expect people to have for us. California has had, as I said, massive hurricane strength winds. They have not had rainfall really since May. I heard one report that was March, but then there was something that fell out the sky. But really since May, no water. And while they're trying to blame Karen Bass, the reality is they have water, but because homeowners were also using, and I would have done the same thing. This is not to blame the homeowners, but they were also using the water to hose down their lawns, thinking that was going to stop the fire, to hose down their homes, thinking that was going to stop the fire. That depleted the water. The water reservoirs have also been depleted because there hasn't been enough rain because of climate change, which is exacerbated by billionaire buttheads like elongated muskrat trying to steal Greenland so they can do to Greenland what they've done to the environment in the Democratic Republic of Congo, because under the ground in Greenland are all the minerals that he and his billionaire boys need to build their spaceships to fly to Mars, because they plan on destroying this planet to extract from it what they can to do what it is that they want. You know how, like, have you ever rented an apartment and you paid your security deposit and it's time for you to move and you got a decision to make, right? Am I going to clean this apartment so I get my full security deposit, or do I not give a damn and I'm just going to trash the apartment and leave and then have my security deposit cover it? They're treating Earth like the security deposit. They just willing to forfeit it and they're going to destroy it because they're not planning to be here. They're serious about they're not planning to be here to deal with the mess that they're dealing with. They're planning to go to freaking Mars. We've learned a lot about viruses. I know it feels like I'm jumping, but I'm going somewhere. Stay with me. We've learned a lot about viruses, and when the body is healthy and it's under attack, the body's immunity system will kick into high gear, right? And we learned a lot about this for those of us who didn't know previously. COVID certainly taught us a lot, but the body, when it's seeking health, is going to mount up everything it can to get rid of the thing that's causing it to be sick, that's causing it to be ill. Mother Earth is going to be here forever. Unless it crashes into another planet, Mother Earth is going to be here forever. And if we, the humans, who get the privilege of occupying Mother Earth, along with the rest of the species on the planet, keeping in which, 1/4 of the freshwater species, according to the Financial Times, is actually facing extinction right now. Thanks to what? Right, human activity fueled by extreme rates of greed and self-interest, funneled by who? The billionaire class. And if we are on the planet Earth, not necessary for Earth to live, and our contribution to Earth is so harmful that Earth has to now make some. Earth is like, y'all are creating horrific environments, but it's fine for me. It's going to be bad for you. You're raising my temperature. So my body's temperature, I'm getting a fever. And as I get a fever, my response is extreme, much more powerful storms, which destroy you, the humans who are doing the thing that's causing the great extremities in weather. We're the virus. We're the virus. Humanity is the virus. And we're at a point right now where we are seeing the natural and properly anticipated result of the actions and the decisions that have been made in terms of policy. And what that means is when extreme greed is allowed to be unlimited, when lower level energy is allowed to drive your policy platforms, when it's allowed to drive your investment platforms, when it's allowed to drive your political platforms, when extreme greed is at the heart of who you are, you can't help but be infectious. You can't, no, that's not the right word. You can't help but be, you're a disease. You're a disease. And we're at the point right now where the world is they're making some decisions. They're making some decisions. I was reading again in the Financial Times this morning about how Indonesia told Apple, yeah, screw you, dog. We don't need your iPhone 16 because your iPhone 16 is not made with the mandatory 40% requirement of ownership of whatever is being made and sold to Indonesians being made in Indonesia, because in Indonesia, they got plans, right? And their plan says, well, if what you trying to sell us, you ain't make here, what you ain't going to do is get to sell it to us. We got the 4th largest economy in terms of purchasing and consumption power on the planet. And if you want to sell us stuff, that's fine, but you got to make it here. You got to employ our people here. You got to do good for us before you expect us to do good for you. And that good being determined and that good that you want us to do for you being us buying your products. Before we buy your products and before we let you sell your products here, you got to do good for us. Where's that sort of energy? Right? That protection energy that says what you want is extreme profit and what we want is to not be rendered extinct. What you want is extreme profit and what we want is to have a quality of life that doesn't look like the hell that y'all creating in America, because America is ruled by unlimited greed. I don't know where this goes. I really don't. My heart is very heavy. My heart is very heavy right now because I'm seeing all of these things coming together, and we are about to enter an environment where the political class is going to be such that it encourages the conditions that brought us to where we are today. Do you remember in the first administration when Donald Trump did not want to send aid to help absorb what was happening in California at that time because of the wildfires? Do you remember how he wasn't going to give them any aid until he was reminded as to how many Republicans voted for him in the state of California? That's where we're going. The FAFO is here, and I can't even find any joy in it because we're all finding out together, which we knew was going to happen. But my God, do I wish better for us. And I know better is possible. I really do. I know better is here. Better is possible. But we got to be willing to make the hard choices. We got to be willing to do the work. Mutual aid is going to matter so much. Our ability to see what is happening and make connections and read. You got to read things like newspapers. Your information, your intelligence cannot be based on algorithmically driven information and data, because that is exactly the sort of mindset that's going to lead us all to collective destruction. We got to head to commercial break. Much more to come on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show here on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. We'll be right back after this.